It's a dangerous position to be in. They are smack in the center. They're the hinge of the three great continents, the known continents of the time: Africa, Europe, Asia. So when the great empires, for example, are coming on a north-south axis from Mesopotamia to Egypt, Egypt to Mesopotamia, guess who's smack in the middle? Israel. And when the axis of empire shifts from north-west, from north-south rather, to east-west, when it's, for example, the Macedonian Greeks of Alexander against the Persians, who's smack in the middle still? And if it's the Romans against the Parthians, Israel is smack in the middle still. It's a dangerous place to live. So what kind of a theology do people who live in a place like that develop? They're going to be invaded, by the way, no matter what they do. And it's a bad theology to tell them that invasion is a punishment for their sins. No wonder the Bible is filled with people crying out for mercy. They're going to be invaded. If they spend their lives on their knees praying, they'll be invaded. In fact, it's a crime against humanity and divinity to tell them you'll be punished if you sin by invasion. Invasion is their destiny in that position.
In 589 BC, the people of Judah, last of the Israelites, rebelled against the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. He responded by ordering his troops to lay waste to Jerusalem and destroy the Judeans' most precious possession, the Temple of Solomon. Then Nebuchadnezzar ordered that the king of Judah should watch his sons be put to death as a sign to all that his royal line had come to an end. Afterward, the Babylonians led the people of Jerusalem into exile in Babylon. In 538 BC, the Persians conquered Babylon. Then the Persian king freed all of the Babylonians' captives. One people he encouraged to return home were the Judeans.
Cyrus, king of Persia, says this: Yahweh, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build him a temple in Jerusalem, in Judah. Whoever among you belongs to the full tally of his people, may his God be with him. Let him go up to Jerusalem in Judah and build the temple of Yahweh, God of Israel.
But returning to a land their grandparents had left decades before was a daunting challenge. And many Jews who had made successful lives for themselves remained in Babylon. It was the adventurous and the deeply religious who were drawn to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. In the 4th century BC, a remarkable people invaded the Middle East. They were the Greeks. Led by one of the greatest generals in history, Alexander the Great, the Greeks would conquer the world from Greece to India. there was far more to the Greeks than military prowess. The Greeks had created the most sophisticated civilization the world had ever seen. Their magnificent art was inspired by a reverence for the human body, which also found its expression in the athletic feats on display in their Olympic Games. But the Greeks also revered the mind. And their greatest thinkers were responsible for the flowering of philosophy, science, and mathematics. As a result, Hellenic architecture, politics, and economics were centuries ahead of the other peoples of the world. For the Jews, the takeover of most of the known world by the Greeks was a threat more dire than any a mere army could pose.
When the Greek world expanded ever eastward, ultimately the Jews of the land of Israel found themselves almost literally smack in the middle of the Hellenistic Empire.
The uprising against Antiochus began in the countryside, for the king had ordered his men to travel from village to village with an idol of Zeus.
The king's commissioners came to the town of Modein to make them sacrifice. Many Israelites gathered around them, but Mattathias and his sons drew apart. The king's commissioners then addressed Mattathias. "You are a respected leader, a great man in this town. Be the first to step forward and obey the king's decree. You and your sons shall be honored with gold and silver and many presents." Raising his voice, Mattathias retorted, "Even if every nation living in the king's dominion obeys him, I, my sons, and my brothers will still follow the covenant of our ancestors." As he finished speaking, a Jew came forward in the sight of all to offer sacrifice on the altar. When Mattathias saw this, he was fired with zeal. He killed the king's commissioners and tore down the altar.
You can see this most clearly. You can see it all in a nutshell in Daniel chapter 7. There's a great vision that Daniel has in that chapter. On the one hand, he sees the great empires, the mighty empires they know, and they're not really like human beings. The empires and their imperial rulers, they're like beasts coming out of the chaotic waves of the sea. They're like a lion, they're like a bear, they're like a leopard. That takes care of the Babylonian Empire, the Median Empire, and the Persian Empire. They're not even human. They're chaotic, feral beasts. And when it comes to the Macedonian Empire, the great empire of Alexander the Great, the text stutters into all it can say is, they're different. It says it 3 times. No beast is adequate to it. The phalanxes, the mighty phalanxes of Alexander the Great.
This conviction that the fate of the Jews depended on defending God's laws at all costs would only grow in the years ahead. And it would set the stage for a true cataclysm when another great empire arrived in the Middle East, the Romans.